Hi, good afternoon. This is Evelyn Lopez. Welcome to Sustainability in Your Ear, the Earth911.com podcast for the week of May 21st, 2018. So on today's show, we're going to talk about how to recycle pet food containers, which is not as simple as you would think. Also, there's a new kind of meat growing in labs around the world. It doesn't come from grazing animals and may be a protein alternative for the world if the taste is right. We'll also talk through 6 sustainable products to help you relax and introduce you to a great recirculation and arts program in Santa Barbara, California, Art from Scrap. This week's interview is with John Atcheson, who created 2 apps, Stuffstr and Sell Along, that let you resell stuff when you are done with it. He's tied the apps to Recreational Equipment Inc., also known as REI, and Amazon's sales systems to track what you buy, so it's as easy as a single tap when you want to sell it later. Also this week, in Reader Questions, we'll explain what to do with deck stain and cleaning solvents, as well as show you a natural alternative to these products. And we have our most interesting question to date: what to do with a bunch of old swords. That's right, swords. So welcome to today's participants. Mitch, welcome back. I hope you're feeling better this week.
Oh yeah, doing great. And it's a beautiful day here in Tacoma, so onward and upward.
Great. And Trey, where are you calling in from today?
I am in Arizona.
Excellent.
How's the weather in Arizona, Trey?
It's pretty warm.
That's funny. I wouldn't have expected that.
That's probably a good thing. All right, let's get to the news. So our first story today is on pet food packaging, and this is something that is near and dear to my heart. I have 3 very spoiled cats. We feed them little cans of cat food. We feed them bags of dried food and quite a few pet treats. So Trey, tell us about recycling pet food packaging.
Yeah, there are several different types of packaging that pet food comes in. The most common would be the cans for your wet food and the bags for your dry food. And a lot of people wonder about cans, whether they're recyclable because they have that lining of the bisphenol A that's gotten a lot of attention recently for the health concerns over the food. That actually has no impact on the recyclability of the cans. So anytime you can take steel cans and put them in your recycling bin, if they're accepted curbside, you can also recycle those wet food cans as well.
Trey, can I ask you here, what about the lids from the cans? Do you know if those are recyclable, or do I need to check with my local recycling place?
The lids are going to be made of the same material, so it's really easy to recycle. A lot of programs will ask that you put the lid inside the can, and then if it's possible to bend the top so the lid stays in there, because it's kind of a health hazard for the sanitation workers. If you have that lid exposed, they might cut themselves on it.
Right. Great. So what about bags?
Yeah, so the bags are kind of complicated. I think a lot of people assume that they're paper, and they used to be paper, what was called multi-wall bags. But a lot of companies, including Purina and other of the bigger name brands, have switched to polypropylene, which is a form of plastic. And the biggest way you can tell if you have plastic versus paper is try to tear it. You really can't tear plastic very well. So the majority of the pet food dry bags are polypropylene plastic. Polypropylene is a really recyclable material. The challenge is we haven't identified a great market for the bags in the US. Most plastic bags are made of what's called polyethylene, or number 2 or number 4 plastic. So the polypropylene, or number 5, there's a limited market for it. You're not going to find a lot of programs that will accept it. So don't make the assumption that just because your program accepts mixed paper or it accepts polypropylene, that bags are included. You're going to want to make sure that it specifically states pet food bags are accepted before you recycle it in your curbside program.
Okay. And if I can't recycle my pet food bags curbside, what other options do I have?
So a few of the manufacturers have worked with a company called TerraCycle on mail-in brigades. And so if you buy either Guardian Pet Food or Open Farm or Wellness, those companies have actually partnered with TerraCycle to provide mail-in programs where you can send your bags in for recycling.
Okay, great. And what about the cat treats?
Yeah, so treats and snacks, they usually will come in pouches, which are a complex material because they're usually polyethylene, that number 2 or number 4, but they will have some sort of liner where there's aluminum foil or other components that make it so you can't just put them with other plastic bags in those grocery store bins. I think that TerraCycle has at least one brigade right now for the pouch packaging. They actually partner with a lot of different companies, not related to pet food. It's one of the more popular items that they collect is those plastic pouches. But you'll just want to check and make sure that your manufacturer will have their program participating.
So Evelyn, are your cats sustainable? How much work does it take to recycle?
I just say the cats demand a lot of attention, but they get a lot of attention. So they're worth the effort.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to hear, because my dog is definitely worth the effort.
Yeah, that's good. Well, what kind of food do you feed your dog? Do you use cans
we use dried.
Dried? Yeah.
But it comes in these new plastic multi-layered bags, and they are definitely a pain to recycle.
Yes. Oh, Trey, so we've talked about cats and dogs. What about smaller animals? What about fish food?
Yeah, fish food is usually going to be coming in a plastic bottle. So that's really great for the environment because most programs these days will accept plastic bottles for recycling. The trick is if it has a cap you screw off, it's usually going to be a plastic bottle. And that makes it very easy to put those in your curbside program.
Excellent. Great. To continue our interesting food theme today, Mitch, our second story is about cellular agriculture. What do you tell us about that?
Well, cellular agriculture is the practice of essentially growing meat on a scaffold in the laboratory. And this is not a new technology. It's something that was really developed early in the century and in the late 1990s. But with 2 billion more people expected on the planet in the next 20 years, if we're going to continue to feed people the way that we do today, we're going to have to find a new way to produce meat. And, in fact, I just saw a stat this week that half of the world's land now is farmed. Yeah. And so we are really literally at the limit of what we can produce. And cattle ranchers need 100 times more land than corn growers to produce just 1 gram of food. So if that hungry world continues to eat meat, we're going to need to make a change, both for the protection of the land and the air, but also for water, because so much water is involved in the production of meat as well. Mm-hmm. And so what is cellular agriculture? They take proteins and nutrients that we need to eat and grow them cell by cell on a scaffold. And with this approach, the consumable meat and plant tissue produced don't need to be harvested from any animals. There's no need to go out and feed and water a cow for 2 or 3 years before you slaughter it. And of course, we take away the slaughter and the horrible aspects of the animal's experience in our industrial food model today. So the vast majority of things that we already use today, like insulin, are grown in the laboratory. But the question that people wrestle with is, do I want to eat something that sounds like it's Soylent Green? Right. For those of you who remember the old movie. Of course, this is not people, as Charlton Heston discovered Soylent Green was. This is literally a lab product. There are a number of different companies trying that are actually commercializing this right now. One is called Impossible Burger, and Vic Bondi, the writer on this story, actually had an Impossible Burger last week. We were talking about what it tastes like. It's grown with soy, and he said essentially it tastes savory, but not like mushrooms or soy burgers, nor like meat. And that's really the question that people have been wrestling with is, will this have the mouthfeel and the taste that people are going to be attracted to? Now, in the case of the Impossible Burger, it has blood But that blood comes from a soybean gene that actually encodes the heme protein in blood and transfers it to the yeast that they use to grow the material. So it's a very, very foreign approach to food for humans who are thinking about this. And I think really the question will be, how do we bring it to market in such a way that you don't think about the fact it was grown in a laboratory? In addition to Impossible Burger, there's a San Francisco-based company called Memphis Meats. There's Masa Meat, which is European, and also Super Meat, an Israeli company making cultured chicken meat, as well as Finless Foods that is growing fish meat from cultures. So you can find almost any type of meat-like substance that you want. It's going to be a while, however, before we have a really massive scale of production of this kind of food. Probably in the next 10 years or so, it'll become really genuinely commercially viable. In fact, only in 2004 did Tufts University in Massachusetts become the first institution in the United States to offer a doctorate in this discipline. So we're talking about 14 years in. There are commercially available options, but this is going to be something that we need to watch and understand as we begin to scale down what has been a very, very inefficient food production system.
Well, it sounds actually very promising. I mean, I wasn't too keen on the idea of the blood soy, but I love animals. I've tried to reduce my animal consumption as a result, but I'm not entirely successful in doing that. So having some other alternatives to actual animals that still have the same protein taste and the benefits, I think that's really a positive.
I do too, but the problem is that we have to go through the phrases like protein taste.
I know.
And now McDonald's is in the middle of trying to reduce its carbon footprint, and they announced some very aggressive goals for reducing their greenhouse emissions by 2030 a few weeks ago. However, they didn't get into what they were going to do about meat. And I think this is one of the options that they're going to have to look at if they're going to continue to serve burgers at the scale they do.
Yeah, I think so too. So I'm going to put a challenge out there right now. Anyone who can come up with some better names than, protein or cellular agriculture, send us an email at feedback@earth911, because I think the marketing is going to be the key to this.
So what I will do is we'll give away a free T-shirt to anybody, to the winner. So everybody listening, if you have an idea for a better name for cellular meat, send it in, and we'll award the T-shirt on the next show.
Great. All right. Well, now after all of our discussion of eating pets and our own consumption of food, let's talk about ways to relax.
Well, I think we need to, because we were talking about protein and texture.
That's right.
So there are a lot of different ways to relax. And of course, it's well known that if you spend a few hours or a few days on yourself, that you're going to be better off physically, mentally, and that your health can improve. But unfortunately, many of the products designed to help you relax can end up harming the environment. So it's important to build your awareness and choose those kinds of products carefully. Just some of the reasons why a product might not be unfriendly first. So this is what you need to take into account as you think about what you're looking at on the shelf. Production. What did it come from? How much energy and raw materials were involved in making it? A lot of things that may look very simple on the counter are actually full of stuff that had to be reduced and thrown away. So the raw materials might be massive, and you should check that kind of thing. Packaging. If the packaging is not recyclable, it's probably just best to pass. And then I think this is probably the one people don't think about the most, shipping. In shipping, you're talking about bringing something in possibly from the other side of the world. So even though that lavender from France or tea from India sounds great and may be relaxing, it carries a carbon load from all of the shipping and transportation involved in getting it first from the field to the producer, then back to the distributor, who then puts it in the stores, and ultimately how you get it and take it home. So finally, the other thing is the energy consumption involved in actually using this. And, if it's a candle, the energy consumption is what you're burning off as you light the candle. So what are these? What are some of the products that we think might be helpful? First off, we looked at aromatherapy. It helps relieve stress. It's a great way to relax. It's certainly something to do while you're doing yoga or meditating. And there are also several other kinds of oils that people are using today to help themselves relax. So organic essential oils, as used in aromatherapy, like lavender or bergamot, can be very, very efficient and sustainable. However, the source of the oil makes the big difference. Like I said, if it's coming from France, it's had to travel across the Atlantic to get to us. Interestingly, in some cases, it may have gone to Asia to be produced in the first place and then sent to us. So looking at the supply chain behind an organic oil is important to understanding its sustainability. Another one, and this is certainly emerging here in the United States right now, is CBD oil. It's a cannabinoid derived from cannabis, which, unlike THC, has no psychoactive effects. So you don't get high from THC, but you experience a deep relaxation, a body relaxation. Because a lot of CBD is produced locally because of the regulations that limit production of cannabis-based products to the state in which they are purchased and consumed. They're actually fairly efficient. Now, another one is organic lotions and scrubs, but you want to be sure, again, to pay attention to the ingredients. Are all the ingredients sourced responsibly? For instance, did it come from the sea? And if it did come from the sea, like a kelp or something like that, was it harvested in a way that wasn't harmful to the fish and to the local environment? Another way to really look for the best overall solution is to look for something local again. So if you're living in a coastal state and you're looking for kelp, you're probably not contributing to the carbon load as much as if you were in a central state.
Yeah.
You can also, if you're into yoga or meditation, look at recycled floor mats. These can come from all sorts of different sources, from recycled clothing and rubbers to textiles that are recovered from even manufacturing and recovered homes. Again, look at what the materials are made of and understand how they were made so that you can determine whether they are the best solution for you. One I like, and this is something I've been using for a number of years, is biodegradable flower pots. And I use these, we'll put them in for a season and then drop them into the ground and just let them grow into the ground. But you want to choose these in a way that minimizes the waste that you're going to introduce in the environment. So if you get a biodegradable flower pot and it comes wrapped in plastic, not such a great idea. Another idea that we had in the article is a solar-powered grill. And everybody loves to sit around the grill and enjoy themselves. This runs on sun power, and you should look into this. There are a number of options available. But you also think about what you're cooking. If you're going to cook meat on that solar-powered grill, you are importing into the solar-powered grill a lot of carbon emissions in the form of what we were talking about earlier, all the cattle production, all of the water involved, and so forth. So, as always, I think the best thing to do is look for waste-free in the sense of, was it produced well? Is it packaged in a responsible way? And was it brought from very far away? So try to buy locally.
I think that's really good advice. I was making sort of body products for a while, and one of the bases that I used was coconut oil, which is great, but I don't think it's anything local about coconut oil.
Washington has absolutely no coconut that I know of.
Right. What we need is something that's made out of blackberry brambles.
There you go.
Yeah.
And in the South, if it was made of kudzu.
That's right. All right. Our next story is art from scrap. So, Mitch, tell us about this.
Well, this is something that actually came in over the feedback mail. Somebody suggested that we list Art from Scrap, a Santa Barbara-based project of environmental education and arts created by a California organization called Explore Ecology. And we just thought this was the neatest way to encourage the reuse of everything for creative expression. Art from Scrap is a retail store that takes donations from all over Santa Barbara County, old screws, wire, mannequin heads, maps, magnets. The pictures of the store are incredibly, it's a vast space full of stuff, and not just one mannequin head, but whole rows of them. And so it really captured our attention. Explore Ecology, which runs Art from Scrap, offers a drop-off program, so you can stop by and leave this stuff at the store, or they will pick it up for you. And we have a summary of what they will pick up on the Earth 911 database. So if you go in and search for Art from Scrap, you will be able to, if you're in the Santa Barbara area, get a sense of what you can donate, and it's extensive. We think this is a great model for other cities to embrace and other counties to embrace. So Art from Scrap is it's a nonprofit, so they give you a tax receipt for your donations, and they make the materials available for teachers to use in the classroom at a deep discount. And 10% of all the sales from Art from Scrap is donated to supporting ongoing community recirculation and children's environmental programs. So it's a great thing.
That is really super. We have a local store in Tacoma called Tinkertopia, and they gather bits and pieces from all over the place. And you can go in there, you can find, you never know what you're going to find.
Exactly.
Bits of fake fur, stamps, all kinds of things. And it's a great place for kids to have birthday parties because they get to create robots and wonderful things.
Well, this, again, I encourage every city or municipality or county to think about how to start this kind of a program. The Explore Ecology program was founded in the 1990s by parents in Santa Barbara who wanted to encourage more environmental awareness amongst their children. But they've taken it a lot further. So now they have a site called Reuse SB that allows you to sell virtually anything. And if you go look on there, in addition to the stuff that's donated to the store, there's old planners that happen to be, in blank because nobody actually plans with those things.
Right.
You can use those. You can buy old pens, pencils, all sorts of stuff. It's a great program that turns the whole city into a recirculating economy. And that's really the most efficient thing we can do with the products we've already invested the energy and resources to produce in.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Next is our interview segment. Mitch, I understand that this week you've interviewed John Atcheson.
Well, yeah, John Atcheson is a Seattle-based entrepreneur who's been pioneering the recirculation economy, like we were just talking about, with two different mobile apps. One's called Stuffstr, and the other is called Sell Along, and they both let you resell what you buy. Sell Along is particularly focused on REI equipment, so outdoor equipment, and Stuffstr is integrated into the sales system at a number of different sites, including Amazon, so that when you buy something, it just goes into basically a catalog of what you could sell later with just one tap in the app. Stuffstr was named a 2017 Accenture Consumer Tech Award winner and has been recognized by Target as a sustainable brands innovator. So let's hear from John. Welcome, John Atcheson, to Sustainability in Your Ear, the Earth 911 podcast. John, you're the CEO and founder of Stuffstr.com. It's an amazing project involved in the idea of recirculation, taking what you have previously bought and putting it back into the economy when you're done with it. And welcome to the show. Tell us about Stuffstr. You've been working on it for a couple of years.
Well, thanks, Mitch. It's great to be here. Yes, we actually, and I do have a co-founder, a guy named Steve Gutman, and we started working on this back in 2014, which at this point seems like a millennium ago. It's been a lot of work, a lot of chapters of the story even at this point. But the genesis of Stuffstr actually came from a previous company that both Steve and I worked at called GetAround, which is a peer-to-peer car sharing company based in San Francisco. And GetAround was fundamentally it's still vibrant and cooking along. But it's about utilizing the 92% idle time of the average car. So
Right.
we spend thousands and thousands of dollars on this, fantastic asset, and then it sits idle 22 out of 24 hours a day. And so, using kind of the principle of Airbnb and applying it to cars, just made tremendous sense both economically and environmentally. And it was really from that experience that that I started looking into all the things other than cars we buy and what we do with those things. And it was just so shocking and in many cases appalling to see what was happening in our general economy with these things we buy. Things like 80% of items being used less than once a month, roughly 70% of items ending up in landfill, and just the enormous amount of money that was being wasted on things that people would buy and get used for some period of time, but then they would fall into non-use, and sometimes they would be in non-use for years and years. In fact, in some cases, people would pay money to put these things into storage so that they, could not have to deal with it.
Well, you shared a statistic a while back that really struck me, and it was the difference that using a product for 20% longer makes to its carbon neutrality. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, I think in general, people don't have any real sense of the resources and effects of the manufacture of these items, and what it means to have something sit around idle for long stretches of time. Because basically, if something is sitting in your closet or your attic or your garage, there's some other product being made to satisfy that need that item could be satisfying, and the statistics around it are a little bit startling in the sense that the household goods that we buy every year actually account for greater carbon emissions than the car we drive. And
yet we have thousands of dollars of stuff sitting around in the house that's going completely unused.
Absolutely. And so if you go back to, my stat about 80% of things being used less than once a month, being able to essentially double the lifetime use of the average thing we buy, that's actually a pretty low bar.
Right.
Because most things are being used a tiny fraction of their capability. And that has a tremendous impact, right? And so if we double the use of these things, then that's equivalent to driving half as much.
So now, how does Stuffstr do that? This is you've launched Stuffstr, and you're here in the States in some experiments with REI and Amazon, amongst others, if I recall correctly.
Never actually directly with REI, but we certainly have had good relationship there and worked with them on some things.
But now you're working on a test launch in the UK. While you're in fact speaking to me from the UK. What is Stuffstr's role in the circular economy?
Well, our vision statement is no unused stuff. And so everything we do is focused on keeping things moving. That anything that's sitting idle is not good. That's our target. We want to get that thing back in motion, get it back into use, and have it be in use as long as it can be used, and then get it recirculated back into some other raw material that can turn into something else that can be useful. Interestingly, though, we take an approach that's very bottom up with that. So, our vision is no unused stuff, but our mission is to empower people to maximize the value of everything they buy. So we're trying to give people, and specifically we're focused on consumers, on how to make it so simple for them to actually maximize the value of these things and to keep them in motion, that they'll do that rather than letting things sit around and gather dust.
So walk us through the user's experience.
Well, before I jump into that, I'll just say that the principle of this, or kind of, I think, the key finding behind Stuffstr and the idea of Stuffstr is that that once things actually walk out of a store, they enter the kind of deep dark beyond, and there is literally zero connection between a buying decision and a disposal position,
Sure, we can't measure anything because it is literally untracked.
Well, yeah, and it's a completely different time frame and mindset and decision process. I mean, by the time something's at disposal, most people don't even remember where they bought it. It's a completely separate decision, and so I think the key, discovery that sits is the basis of Stuffstr is that you have to be able to get things into some kind of closed loop. You've got to be able to actually capture the information about the things that are being purchased before they walk out the door. You've got to attach that, tether to these items, because once you have that information, then everything changes, because you can then keep track of these things. You can track the value. You can continually apprise the owner of the value. You can make it very, very simple for them to not only know what the value is, but how to capture that value. And so with that kind of framework in mind, the user experience for Stuffstr, and this has evolved. I mean, we probably should have some discussion about how it's evolved over time, because it's been a great learning experience about, specifically about, how to get consumers to think differently about, recirculation and resource use. But I think also just this whole kind of, the diffusion of change, right? And how you get people to change ways that they've been, practicing for their whole life.
And I think that comes down to context and based on information, being able to show them, as you said, the value of something at this time. If I'm looking at something I haven't used in 3 years and realize that I could pass it on to somebody else who could make better use of it, as well as make some money, that's context that the consumer simply hasn't had in the past.
That's right. And I think, when you talk about even, resale, where someone is capturing value, generally the images that pop into people's minds are, oh my gosh, that's a lot of work. I've got to go take pictures. I've got to create listings. I've got to, write things up. I've got to deal with, buyer haggles back and forth. I've got to arrange drop-offs.
Strangers.
And exactly. Yes, right, exactly. And it's not a positive message. And I think one of the really interesting findings that we had was to go out and look at all of the different resale marketplaces. So eBay, the Amazon used goods channel, Craigslist, innovative startups like OfferUp and various others, and collectively those platforms account for less than 2% of items. So the people who actually, or the items that actually are resold, it's like a fringe activity. It's a tiny, tiny sliver of the throughput of things that are purchased and go through our ecosystem, which of course means that 98% of the stuff we buy captures no residual value at all.
Right.
And, and among that, about a third of it ends up going into some kind of useful recycling or charity or something like that. And then the other 2/3, around 70%, ends up going in a landfill. So, so there's, this just tremendous waste. And it's, and it's built around the fact that fundamentally people don't take the steps to capture this because it's just a lot of work.
So you actually build in at the point of sale. So when somebody is buying, they will be able to track in an app that is associated with the retailer, I assume, what they purchased, and later on then make choices about whether or not to keep or recirculate or sell it.
That's exactly right. So we create essentially a closed loop for, and it's on a retailer by retailer basis. And like I probably should now give you the user experience. So as a user, the whole goal for us is that you don't have to actually do anything. If you can do absolutely nothing to make this happen, then we've scored. So so as you're buying things, automatically all the images and data and transaction information about that purchase will just appear in your app. That everything is just there in this running inventory. And typically when someone first connects, we go back about 5 years. So you start with about 5 years worth of purchases.
Wow.
and you have, complete information about each of those purchases. You can see the picture and read about, all the details of this item. But then, so that's kind of part one. And then because we have that information, we're able to go out, and it's all very, very specific information. We can go out and track resale marketplaces, and we can keep you apprised of the current resale value of every item all the time. So we can have, real-time pricing going on the screen that shows you what these things are worth. And and further, because we have all this information, we can completely streamline the process of reselling and recirculating those items. So if there's an item that I think, gosh, I'm really not using this much anymore, and it's worth, $52, then literally all you have to do is tap a button on your phone, and within usually 1 to 2 hours, a courier will show up and pick the item up free of charge. You don't have to pack it or ship it or do anything. You just hand it over to the courier. As soon as the courier gets it, they mark it as received, and that then electronically transmits to you a payment in the form of store credit at the retailer where you originally purchased the item.
You also have a wallet. You have a wallet that is associated with your stuff.
That's exactly right. So your stuff is currency, and so you can literally pick up your phone, look at this inventory, decide that you're really not using these things, and have them hauled away and be paid within 1 to 2 hours. And that's it, right? So John, go ahead.
As you think about the future of retail or the future of buying and selling stuff, it sounds like a radically different world. Are we talking about a change in the way we own stuff? Is this a variation on leasing in the sense that or ride sharing, where we're using somebody else's car for a while? Going back to your experience.
Well, I think a basic tenet of circular economy thinking is the idea of use cost versus ownership. Mm-hmm. And the more that we can move towards people thinking of things in terms of how much it costs me to actually use this item, then we're winning, because it's just a completely known economic fact that if people are aware of the economists would call it marginal cost, right? Of having this thing sitting around. If I'm not, actually capturing that or making any kind of benefit out of it, then I don't want to be spending it. And so I think from the Stuffstr standpoint, we're trying to make people aware of this value, and they, from that, will see that this value tends to decline over time, right? If something is sitting in my closet, it's usually not appreciating. It's usually sliding down the scale. And so it is actually costing me money to have this stuff sitting around. Right now, people don't really have any concept of that at all. They really have no idea even what the basic, price of this item would be, let alone how that's changing over time. And so giving people that awareness is, one big step forward in terms of getting people to recirculate their things.
Yeah, I think what happens, certainly my experience has been that I didn't pay a lot of attention to the carrying cost of all the stuff in my house until my kids moved out. And then suddenly I realized I was in a house full of stuff that I was paying to continue to store, and not really thinking in terms of minimizing that load on myself and my wife as we grow older. So one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is that as our generation, because you and I are roughly the same age, ages out, there's going to be a massive unloading of stuff that has accrued in our homes that younger, lighter living people will not be carrying around with them. That's going to be quite a change.
It is. And unfortunately, an awful lot of that stuff is really beyond, in terms of resale and really capturing what could have been the value of it. It's pretty much past that point.
Exactly.
And Stuffstr really doesn't, we don't really address that issue. I mean, Stuffstr is not a platform for the set of golf clubs that's been sitting in your garage for 20 years.
Right. It's a solution to the future, which is absolutely a wonderful thing. But it's an interesting, we're at an inflection point where we can start to do this. And now, for instance, I want to track what I buy so that I could get rid of it when I'm done with it, or when I've finished my use so that somebody else can use it. And I'm really looking forward to using Stuffstr in that way. Now, you're in the UK right now working on a launch with a retailer. What's the status of Stuffstr here in the States? I know that it started off as an experiment, which of course has been recognized by Accenture and the World Economic Forum and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation as having been really disruptive and innovative. What's the current path to market for Stuffstr, and where should we expect to see it soon?
Yeah, so we have been out there, as I said, since 2014, and and we've gone through several iterations in terms of how to engage consumers in doing this, and that to me that's our biggest challenge, is getting people to engage and begin to think of things differently and act differently. We started with a version of the platform that was focused on trying to match people up with mostly charities that really wanted and needed those items. And people thought it was really just a fantastic idea, so cool and everything, but it was still too much work. People didn't really do it. And so, so we evolved to where we, got to this current model that we're pursuing. And as soon as we kind of made known to the retail community that we were heading down this path and wanted to do this, we were invited by a major retailer here in the UK to come over here and pilot this with them. In fact, they said, we'll pay you money to come to the UK and do this with us. And so that's kind of how we got over here and got started. I mean, I think, within that context, there is, in general, I would say, a greater awareness of, and whether it's called circular economy or other things, there's a greater awareness of recirculation of resources here in Europe than there is in the States right now. And part of that is consumer awareness, part of it's corporate awareness, and part of it's, government regulations. Extended producer responsibility laws are not uncommon over here. And so there's just a much, deeper understanding and awareness of these kind of principles and the value of these things. And so, it's been really interesting to be over here for the past several months, kind of putting this all together and getting things in place, and just, really getting a sense of that awareness and that excitement around the idea of what we're doing. That's not to say that we won't do things in the States. And we actually do have conversations going on with a number of major U.S. retailers. And it looks to me like, one or more of those are going to come together sometime fairly soon. And, when they do, then we'll begin to deploy the service in the States. But
so you'll essentially be a Stuffstr inside kind of brand that consumers should be looking for. It sounds like the retailer itself will have its own app. That's how you will interact with the retailers, what you purchased with the retailer. And then over the course of time, Stuffstr might be able to aggregate all that into something even more meta and simple. But is that essentially, as U.S. consumers are watching for this opportunity to participate in recirculation, they should be looking for Stuffstr inside?
Yeah, no, I mean, powered by Stuffstr is definitely,
Okay.
Kind of a key aspect of what we're doing. We want to be just the universal platform for recirculating items. And, we don't really care if people know that much about who we are. We just want things to get recirculated. So, I mean, our goal right now is to be able to weave this into the fabric of everything a retailer does, right? This should be a part of the retailer app. It should be part of the retailer website. It should be just part of the whole experience, because what we really want to be happening here is for people to not only begin to gauge things on the basis of use cost and all of that, we want people to start really buying differently. We want people to start looking at their purchase decisions and linking those decisions in their heads with, their disposition or, their disposal decisions, which, only really happens with, cars and maybe boats these days. People don't do it with shirts and bicycles and those kinds of things.
Well, we've never had the tools to do it. And it's incredible that you're going to be bringing the tools to do so to market.
Yeah, well, one of the really interesting things that we discovered at Getaround was that when people would first list their cars for sharing, they'd put their beat up Toyota on the marketplace and they'd rent it out for a few months. And then, 6 months later, the Toyota would kind of disappear from the system and a BMW would show up. and it was just totally a matter of people looking at the economics and saying, this is stupid. Why have this, inexpensive kind of, not very durable car when actually I could have a really nice car that I could drive when I'm not sharing it, and it works out better for me because I can rent it out for more money.
Well, these are amazing visions of the future. I mean, because that you're describing the ability for everybody to live a better life as well, not simply to get by on the least they can, but because they have the ability to monetize and treat their stuff as an investment rather than simply using it and throwing it away. That's quite a thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I look at the, kind of the classic scenario of someone going into the store to buy a bicycle for their kid, right? And what currently goes through someone's mind in that moment is, Bobby's going to outgrow this bike in 18 months. So what's the kind of cheapest bike I can find that will last 18 months?
Yeah.
And he can ride it during that time. And if I actually know what the depreciation curve looks like on all these different bicycles, and I have a belief set that I can capture the residual value of that bicycle just by tapping a button,
right?
I think totally differently. And I started looking at those bikes and think, well, which of these bikes is actually going to, have the highest resale value 18 months from now? And so I buy a bike that's, twice as expensive, lasts twice as long. Bobby gets this fantastic bike, and everybody wins.
Well, John, that's a beautiful vision, and I think one that's going to be important to track. And I'd like to invite you back to talk more about this as Stuffstr makes progress. But thank you very much for joining us today. This is an inspiring conversation.
Well, thanks again for having me, Mitch. It's great to be with you.
That's John Atcheson, CEO and co-founder of Stuffstr. We'll be right back with the rest of the show.
Well, that was a really interesting interview. It just makes you realize, too, it's like there's probably a use for everything if you can just come up with it.
John has told me at one point that they will buy back a pair of socks for 50 cents, even if they can't get 50 cents out of it later, simply to build the habit. And recirculation is a habit that we all need to start thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, up next, and this I have to admit is always my favorite portion of our show, reader questions. And our first question comes from Noriko in Spencer, Indiana. And Noriko asks, she says, I have cans of old deck stain and cleaning solution. Most of them are never used and are rusted in the cans. I would like to know where I can take them for disposal and recycling. Now, Trey, you did some research on this. What can you tell Noriko?
So first off, stain and other materials for treating wood or paint, they're going to be classified as what's called household hazardous waste. And the thing to be aware of for those products is there isn't a recycling market. So counties and cities are actually paying the fees to dispose of these items properly. Mm-hmm. And what you're going to find is that areas with larger populations, they have a better odds of being able to absorb those fees. In the case of Indiana, the state is actually broken out into solid waste districts. It's one of several states, specifically in the Midwest, like Arkansas and Missouri. They get funding for districts. So unfortunately, Noriko in Owen County doesn't have access to a household hazardous waste program, but she is part of a solid waste management district that's run by Hendricks County that offers HHW programs and might provide some sort of voucher for her to participate. So what she wants to do is actually contact the head of that solid waste district. Her name is Len Detwiller, and her phone number is 317-858-6070. Len can probably provide more information on what Noriko is able to do in her area.
That's great. Well, Noriko, we hope you can connect with Len. But here's sort of a question for both you and Mitch, Trey. Since deck cleaner is pretty hard to get rid of, what should I do if I want to clean off my deck?
Well, there are a lot of outdoor deck maintenance product on the market, but there are also alternatives that are natural. And the one that we would recommend starts with the common baking soda and vinegar solution. So basically, sprinkle your deck with baking soda and pour a cup of vinegar over it using a sprayer, right? So the two react and start to break up the crud that's grown up on the wood. The next step is, and one more thing that you put into the water with the vinegar is 2 tablespoons of an eco-friendly dish soap.
Okay.
So that starts breaking up all of the materials, and then you need to use a power washer. And the two of them together will take this off. The runoff isn't harmful, and that's a good thing to be doing so you don't have to worry first about the quality of your yard, and later you don't have to worry about cleaning up anything afterwards.
That sounds perfect. So the baking soda, vinegar, and also the dishwashing detergent, all of that, if it goes into the lawn, no big deal at all. No,
they're natural chemicals that would occur in a lawn virtually anywhere. Trey, do you have any additional ideas on particularly how do we get people to use less of these materials?
I think the key is just promoting alternatives and getting those recipes out there so people know what they can do instead of buying products that are household hazardous waste.
Well, I think we need to create a cookbook.
I think so too.
But of course, everything would be vinegar and baking soda.
Vinegar. Those are the most important ingredients. But if they work really well.
Exactly.
I mean, that's pretty much what I use around the house. And it scrubs. It does everything.
So this question was my favorite question we've received since we started the podcast. Maureen in Orland Park, Illinois asks, and this is a direct quote, "I have several swords that I want to recycle or destroy. Is there a place I can take them?" And I think Maureen's question is a doozy, but the answer is really straightforward. This is scrap metal. So take them to a scrapyard, which will actually pay for the swords based on the weight of the metal in them. It may not be a lot, but you will be assured that those swords are going to be recycled responsibly. But I also think, I get a strong sense that Maureen wants this product or this sword or swords destroyed. And so she should probably damage them by bending them prior to delivery because, of course, if somebody sees a sword and they like it, they might pick it up and keep it. Mm-hmm. So if the intent is to get rid of it, do something that will actually prevent it from being used again. The closest scrap metal locations to where Maureen is living are in Palos Heights and Lamont, Illinois. Keywell Metals in Palos Heights and Lamont Scrap Processing are the two closest within 8 to 10 miles of her home. So that's where she should call.
I think that sounds great. I also have to say, I think it would be extremely therapeutic to take a heavy-duty hammer and just wail on those swords.
There you go.
Just hammer the heck out of them, bend them, do whatever you can,
dull them.
Throw them on the ground, have no mercy, and then recycle them. And you're done.
There you are. So, we weren't going to necessarily go to this place, but I think we've gone pretty fast today. And I just quickly want to offer, we had to make a correction recently to a story on microplastics. Lauren Murphy, one of our writers, did a story recently about a research study that found that microplastics are almost ubiquitous in bottled water, particularly plastic bottled water. And we received from the International Bottled Water Association a request for correction. And they were right. They said that there's microplastics everywhere, including in 90% of the drinking water in the world coming out of the tap. Okay, that's true, but they went further. They said, there's no proven health risk there. However, we went and looked this up. One of the reasons that there is no proof yet is that the plastics industry has not studied carefully the impact of microplastics. Microplastics are a ubiquitous human-made pollutant. They are everywhere. We completely agree with the International Bottled Water Association that it is everywhere, but it is very, very misunderstood. We can't take for granted, just as we could not take for granted that cigarette smoke was not harmful, that microplastics are not harmful. So we made the change. We will, we happily correct that, but we want to point out that the argument that was presented in support of this was spurious. In fact, yes, there is microplastics in bottled water and in tap water. We should get rid of all the microplastics. So we want to thank the International Bottled Water Association for correcting the error, but we also want to point out that the fact that it is everywhere does not make it a good thing. It is in bottled water.
Okay, I think that's very helpful. So that's it for this week's episode of Sustainability in Your Ear. You can send us comments, questions. You can give us feedback on any story, including more about bottled water, by emailing us at feedback@earth911.com. You can follow us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker, and at the earth911.com website. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.